Is it okay now? Okay, so hello everyone. Thanks for the invitation, and it's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Iosif Botetzagias. I'm a professor at the Department of Environment, University of the Aegean, and a research associate with the Theophrastus Research Institute, one of the partners. What I would like to talk to you about today is to give you a brief introduction into carbon farming in the European Union context, and talk about what it is and what are the prospects and what are the possible challenges of this brand new concept. You have to be out of this planet if you haven't heard about climate change, one of the most pressing and terrifying global problems that our species is facing. Climate change is here, and the main reason, actually the reason, is our carbon emissions. Carbon emissions are the CO2 or other greenhouse gases like methane and so on are contributing to the heating of our atmosphere, leading to abnormal and excess temperatures like the ones we're witnessing now in Athens, which is a very sunny and warm day, very unlike January. Anthropogenic climate change and greenhouse gas emissions come from a variety of sources, including the agriculture. As you can see here, the agricultural sector is contributing almost 11.4% of the total EU greenhouse gases emissions. And why? Because basically everything that happens in the agricultural sector, as in many other aspects of human activity, has to do with CO2 or with other greenhouse gases, methane, and so on. And in this very nice graph, you can see how the different greenhouse gases from different aspects of the agricultural process contribute to the emissions. The good news is that because of the measures that we have taken over the years about mitigating climate change, in the EU, we have been witnessing a steady decrease of our greenhouse emissions, and we have this goal of turning the Union into carbon neutral in the coming decades. The bad news is that one of the sectors that we have seen the least progress, or if you prefer, not as ambitious reductions in emissions, is the agriculture. It's you can see the bar in that red circle. Compare, let's say, to the energy industry or the manufacturing industry, agriculture has the least reduction, a mere 20%, in where we have witnessed reductions up to 65%, 70%. So the union decided that we must do something also to increase the greenhouse gases reduction from the agricultural sector. And there exists a framework about agricultural emissions, and it comes in the form of the so-called LULUCF framework, which is the EU regulation on land use change and forestry, which actually describes how the union aims to reduce its emissions coming from land uses and from forestry. And in the graph, you can see the progress that we have made over the years. All the bars that you can see below the zero x-axis are reductions. Everything you see above is positive inputs. And as you can see, this yellowish timeline is the cropland, actually the area that has been cultivated. So, and the solid black line is the overall progress. And because it's on the negative, it shows that we are making progress. Emissions have been reduced. But as you can see, we are still quite a way from the target, which for 2030 is the dot that you can see on the right there. So basically, for 2030, we are aiming to have a reduction of 310 megatons of CO2 equivalent emissions. So we are making progress. We are still away from the target, and cropland has continuously been one of the positive drivers of the emissions. And in this context, just recently, in 2021, the European Commission decided to introduce a new tool, or if you prefer, a new concept of speeding up these emission reductions. And in the context of this framework of land use and land use change and forestry. And this new concept was the so-called carbon farming. And as the Commission stated in 2021, carbon farming should be contributed in the context of the LULUCF framework, a reduction of 42 megatons of CO2 equivalent, basically charging carbon farming initiatives with contributing a 13% reduction of the whole agricultural emission sector. So, what is this carbon farming? Carbon farming is basically everything that deals with the flows and the management of the carbon pools and the greenhouse gases in the context of agriculture at the farm level. And basically, the idea is to use practices developed and operating at the farm level to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and back into the soil or back into the plants. And there's a huge variety of different carbon farming initiatives, or if you prefer, examples. And here I'm just giving you just an overview of some of these potential initiatives that would qualify as carbon farming. And please note that carbon farming is not restricted only to the land, to terrestrial initiatives. As you can see at the bottom right corner, we also have the blue carbon, which is the carbon sequestrated in marine areas, in coastal areas, and so on. But this will not be the topic of my presentation, and also is not the issue of the Carbon Farming Hub initiative. So carbon farming basically is a new idea, a new tool, a new approach of mitigating climate change, of taking CO2 out of the atmosphere through the agricultural process. So it has certainly an environmental dimension. It provides environmental benefits, but not alone. Based on many studies, carbon farming can be a win-win-win-win situation. It can be good for the environment, certainly. It can be good for the economy. And it can be also good for the farmers, provide them extra income. It can be also good for the society. And here is a list of potential co-benefits of carbon farming as identified by a recent review paper by Baumberg et al. And because of that, because it seems such a great idea, such a win-win-win-win situation, carbon farming is flourishing, not only in the European Union, but across the globe. In the United States, in Australia, in New Zealand, you have dozens, at least, maybe hundreds, of carbon farming initiatives. Only recently, the Institute of the European Environmental Policy, which is an NGO operating at the European Union level, has published an inventory where it has amassed and brought into one place all the different initiatives occurring currently in the European Union about different aspects of carbon farming schemes. And you can see the major categories: cropland management, peatland management, grassland and livestock, and agroforestry. And it's worth a visit because it's a very nice inventory. Per category, you have all these nice initiatives. Excuse me. You can go to their website, see what they are doing. There are virtually hundreds. And I could stop my presentation here and tell you what a great idea it is and how happy we are, and the future looks bright. But as you probably well know, the devil is always on the details. And this would be the other part of my presentation. What are the caveats and what are the potential pitfalls of this great and so promising idea? Because carbon farming comes with a number of issues, with a number of potential pitfalls, which hopefully in our initiative we will address, and we will help young practitioners, young farmers to overcome, or at least to deal with. One major problem about carbon farming, and actually this is the topic of one of my colleagues' next presentation, is the problem of measurement. And because there are so many different ways to determine the soil organic carbon, basically to what extent your farm soil, your farm is absorbing carbon, and because it takes some time to start seeing tangible results on the soil, it's very vague to what extent the different carbon farming practices have an impact. As you can see, and I have put it in this red box, based on different practices, what are the percentage, the per hectare mitigation potential? And as you can see, the estimations vary extremely from 3.5 to 29, from 0.03 to 27 tons of CO2 per year. So it's huge. So one challenge is to develop better techniques of measuring what is actually taken out of the atmosphere and put back into the soil, is sequestrated, is taken out. And as you can see, this problem of measuring, reporting, and verification, which is very important if farmers and practitioners are going to receive some benefits, or if the European Union is to create a credible and manageable framework for carbon farming. Uncertainty and the cost vary again widely, both across the different carbon farming categories, and depending on the kind of monitoring that we are aiming for. And as you can see from this color map, there's a very big challenge. All the boxes are in the red and in the yellows. So this is something that our colleagues in the natural sciences, the agronomists and the environmentalists, have to deal with. The second important problem in carbon farming is the issue of time and the temporal dimension. Basically, carbon farming benefits can very easily be reversed. Simply, if you stop doing what you have been doing, the carbon will not simply stay in the soil, will not stay stored, it will come back out. So there's this problem that you have to continuously pursue these carbon farming friendly practices, and up to you reach a certain point that the farmer or the practitioner practically does not have any added value. If you reach a point where you simply have to do what you have been doing only to maintain the very positive achieved status quo. And it's very unclear what should happen or what would happen if a farmer or a practitioner at some point says, okay, I had enough, I have done my bit, and now I stop. So everything that has been achieved will simply be reversed. So one issue, and that's a challenge for policymakers and for decision makers, how to deal with this inherent problem of the temporal dimension. The third issue is that I mentioned that it's a win-win-win-win situation, but this is not really the case. There are also potential risks. Different kinds of farming practices have different potential risks. You can see them on the box here, which should be addressed, because there's no point in achieving positive results in carbon, in CO2 and greenhouse gases management, while some other environmental dimensions are deteriorating. Another problem is the so-called issue of leakage. which is very common in environmental policy making and environmental management. Basically, it says, okay, maybe you are achieving good results and you are making progress in one area, in one domain, but with the reduced cost or the increased income that you are gaining in this area, you go next door and you ruin everything. So basically, carbon leakage is an instance, a case where carbon gains in one area are offset by carbon losses in another. And I think this is a very telling example. Maybe you have an industry or you have a big corporation or a farmer that is reducing deforestation in one of his areas, and the income that he gains from this project is used for more intensive agricultural practices right next door. So how you balance that? Again, a challenge for policymakers. A challenge for the practitioners themselves and for the farmers is that the one of the economic dimension. And we have to be honest that carbon farming over time has diminishing returns. A piece of land, an area of soil can can capture that much CO2. So at the beginning, of course, if it's depleted, it will start absorbing a lot, but over time, that would go down. So at the end, as I mentioned with the temporal dimensions, you get to a point where farmers are practicing carbon farming practices simply to maintain the status quo. So it doesn't make, after a certain point, it doesn't make a clear economic sense. So how we would deal with that? And that brings me to the existing proposals that simply because it's obvious that carbon farming is not going to work if it's not beneficial for the practitioners themselves, for the farmers, the elephant in the room is funding. Who is going to fund all these initiatives? Or at the end of the day, why should a farmer, a young farmer, an existing farmer, or an agricultural entrepreneur should bother to go into this domain if it doesn't make any income, if it doesn't make any money? So there is a list of potential financing mechanisms, and this comes from the proposals of the European Commissions. Basically, the idea is that either the EU itself, with or without additional funding from the national authorities, would provide funding for the farmers. There's this idea that either companies would subsidize farmers through their chain of supply because they were doing something good for the environment, and then the company can go out to the customers and say, look, I'm such a great company, I care for the environment. So you have a benefit. Or maybe carbon farming could become a kind of label, a green label, like the ones we are accustomed to, organic farming and so on. So the customers will be willing to pay a premium for products that come through carbon farming. And the final, excuse me, a hugely debate issue is whether farmers can get carbon credits, which will be used in a market, in a carbon market, like the ones that we know and we are accustomed under the Kyoto Protocol and so on, whether the carbon gains through carbon farming could be traded. And this is a red flag for every single environmental organization in the Union, because basically they said that's a kind of carbon offsetting. It will not contribute to the goal of creating a carbon neutral union, because simply the farmer who is engaged in carbon farming, he creates some gains only to be traded with that or that company or this industry, which continues to pollute, which continues to emit greenhouse gases, and it's offsetting, it's damaging climate practices by the good work done by the farmer. So there are so many challenges and so many gray areas and so many areas of debate where we stand now. Basically, in the European Union, we stand on the gray because carbon farming is such a brand new issue, and only lately has the European Union engaged with this and start taking some measures. And all these measures and the European Union's tools for promoting carbon farming are related with the big and leading agricultural scheme of the Union, which of course is the Common Agricultural Policy. And we will have the chance to hear more from my colleagues later on. It was only, excuse me, it was only in 2021 that the European Commission decided to take some steps into promoting carbon farming. The Commission in December, barely 3 years ago, released its communication on sustainable carbon cycles, which makes explicit reference on carbon farming. And basically, it, sorry, yeah, that's better. Okay. Sorry for that. So basically, it stated a framework of how it wishes to develop this carbon farming. And you can see the major points: funding practices of carbon farming, standardize the monitoring and the reporting, and provide improved knowledge and advisory services to land managers. And Carbon Farming Hub is one of those points. That was the initial suggestion in 2021. Barely a year later, the European Commission released its proposal for a carbon removal certification framework, where basically says, okay, if you decide to engage in carbon farming, how it's going to be done. And you can see this criteria nicely summarized into the quality criteria: quantification, additionality, long-term storage, and sustainability. These are the main pillars that any scheme aspiring to get support through carbon farming should meet. And it was only, okay, that's how it would work. The EU would develop the methodologies. It will start a certification scheme. There will be a third-party verification. The activity will get certified, and then you will be registered as a farm practicing carbon farming. And now we are just in step one. It not only in November 2023, the European Parliament adopted the draft legislation, and as we speak, we are in the so-called trilogue, the discussions between the European Parliament, the European Council, and the European Commission to decide what would be that legal framework, what would be that directive or EU regulation that would guide carbon farming in the European Union. And the good news are that the results are expected within 2 months' time. By March 2024, a decision should have been reached. That said, because probably you say, okay, so it's vague, we don't know what's going on, so why bother? We should bother because in anticipation of these very detailed carbon farming frameworks, as you can remember, back in 2021, the Commission said that carbon farming should be used as one of the tools for reducing the emissions from the land use and land use change. And the interesting fact is that it is happening as we speak, and it is happening under the revised CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy. In the boxes where I have put the arrows, these are funding mechanisms of the CAP that can be used for supporting and financially supporting carbon farming initiatives. And this is not just in theory. If you go through the national strategic plans of the CAP, you will be amazed to find out that 35% of the area of utilized agricultural area in the member states is supposed to be run under carbon farming schemes. And you can see the percentages for the different countries. Overall, the EU is 35, and I think Greece is doing pretty well. For Greece, it's 47.5%. So although it's still not very clear how it's going to happen, based on the CAP specific objectives, the member states are already taking that very seriously. And also the Commission is taking that very seriously. The European Union is taking that very seriously because now, we're in the process, we have several European Union funded projects which try to address all these issues and gray points in carbon farming. Only recently, we had the conclusion, not only, no, it's about to conclude, a live project about carbon farming, which basically tries to address the measurement issue. And we have also two ongoing Interreg programs, one in the North Sea and another in the northwest of Europe, which basically are trying all of these ongoing projects, all these caveats and all these gray areas I have mentioned earlier. How would we measure the reductions? What are the best practices to achieve the most substantial reductions? How can we persuade the stakeholders and the farmers to be engaged? And to this later goal, I think that our own initiative, the Carbon Farming Hub, is an integral part because this is what we will be trying to do in this project. Try to work with the local stakeholders and the farmers in helping them to overcome the possible hurdles and to navigate them into this nebulous area, which, of course, at the end, there's a very bright and green and carbon neutral sun horizon. Thank you very much for your attention. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to